Mill is one of the most intriguing archetypes in all of Magic. It's an alternate win condition built into an archetype with multiple options for commanders. For those who do not yet know, Mill is an archetype based around taking cards from your opponent's library and putting them into their graveyard. When a player goes to draw a card and is not able to due to the fact that they do not have a library, they will lose the game. This video will offer a comprehensive review on the current state of Mill, the problems and ideas surrounding Mill, and a deck list that is finally not headed by Phaenax. Welcome to State of the Mill 2020. Let's start off with the basics of how to play Mill. The name Mill is derived from the classic card Millstone, which puts cards from the top of the library into the graveyard. When playing this deck, the point is to make one player run out of cards in their library, which is why it's usually wise to choose one opponent and lash onto them until they run out of cards. Otherwise, you have to mill through 300 cards before you can do any damage, 100 for each player, rather than just 100 at a time. When you look on to mill one player in the meantime, another player could die, meaning we don't need to mill them out to win. So the main strategies of a mill deck are defense and aggressive mill, which is why Phaenax, God of Deception, has come to dominate this archetype. With Phaenax, we just get to sit back and block over and over again while we mill at the end of turn for huge chunks. But what about for us who can't necessarily purchase this $8 god? We need another option that is still viable, so let's take a quick tour of our other options. Drainu, Licklord, is immediately concerning and not a card I want to play, because any red board wipe will kill us with this dude. Starve Extinction, more like good game. Lazav the Multifarious is good but not explosive, and doesn't mill our opponents himself. He may be an include to our deck, but he should not be the leader. Synergize Lord of Secrets seems super cool and potentially powerful too. The only problem, and this is a large problem, is that this dude costs 7 mana to cast, 1 kill spell, and we lose the game because we lost an entire turn late game casting our commander. Una, Queen of the Fae, is a very good and strong option, but it's also an exile trigger, meaning it doesn't really mill. Plus it's $10, so at that point we might as well run Phaenax. This brings us to Mirko Vosk Minddrinker. My first criticism is that this dude costs 5 mana for a 2/4 with evasion but no protection. This guy just seems fragile, but if we can protect him with cards like Whispersoak Cloak or give him Double Strike, this could do some serious damage in a game. Plus, mill in the command zone could be really viable, making this so far my favorite option. Lazav Dimir Mastermind is full of potential, but I'm not sure he's the right commander for us. This is because it relies on other mill cards rather than being mill itself. It also relies on the power level of our opponents to dictate the power level of our deck. I absolutely play Lazav in the deck, but I won't be putting him on the front lines. That honor will go to Mirko Vosk. If you are new to Mill, it's important to know that Mill is always getting some new tools, but few will compare to some of the staple cards. In almost every set, or every few sets, a good Mill card will come around that may or may not deserve to go into your deck. However, this video will hopefully help get well acquainted to that stack of cards, and its limitations and strengths. Mill can come in all shapes and sizes, wheels, exile effects, and straight and genuine mill. So let's get into the limitations of Mill, especially when it's not headed by a god. So the first limitations of Mill are graveyard themes. They want us to mill them. So to avoid this, you can either not mill someone with Marin in the command zone, or play cards like Bajukabog. You could also use the exile mill effects, but this isn't quite as good for milling effectively. More likely you should just run Graveyard Hate to get rid of the problematic pieces so you can still get graveyard value with your mill cards. The second limitation is board state. A very playable card in Mill is Mind Grind, one of the best cards in the archetype. For 10 mana we can mill through theoretically at least 20 cards and change a game, but in reality we have done nothing to further our board. We may have just changed the game completely for one opponent, but our board state remains the same. We haven't created a token, a blocker, or anything. We wasted a turn to mill 20 plus cards, which is irrelevant if an opponent kills us anyway. Because of the creature nature of the deck, Phaenax's mill synergies don't need as much to deal with this problem. So this is a problem we may try to overcome by playing cards like Primal Amulet, so that way we maximize value off of these big spells, and Politic for a turn of peace if we mill a giant portion of a common enemy's deck. Let's get into the actual deck tech, keeping in mind what we already went over. We're not going to impose a strict price restriction for this deck, but Phaenax is too expensive, so we're not going to be playing cards around the $8 plus range. It took me a while to make this deck, but here's what I came up with. Let's start off with a deeper look at our commander and what he can do for us in terms of mill. The rest of the deck will provide a deep base of aggressive mill with the potential to deplete our opponents of all valuable resources. Mirko Vosk will hopefully cap this off by milling our opponents for that last bit of cards. We want to protect our commander with cards like Swiftfoot Boots, or a great card that you should put in if you have it, but we will not be playing due to budget restrictions, Lightning Greaves. Whisper's Silk Cloak will get us an automatic hit with said commander. Stronic Resonator can double Mirko Vosk trigger, or the triggers on Fleet Swallower or Nemesis of Reason. Two very affordable and powerful effects we play in here that can be copied. But what else can mill, and how will it do that? Chancellor of the Spires has an incredible enter the battlefield ability, and if we get lucky enough, we can mill 7 cards for absolutely no mana, which is very powerful. Consuming Aberration is one of the best cards for milling in the game. Whenever you cast any spell, it mills, which we should be doing a lot. We mill someone. Oh, and it's going to be crazy powerful because of that power and toughness. Yes, please. Dreamborn Muse should be a hidden powerhouse, just like Dustmantle Guildmage in alternate win condition. Every turn it can mill an opponent for most likely between 3 and 6 cards. Multiply this by even only 3 turns of triggers, and we have milled at least a collective 27 cards for 4 mana. That seems pretty good. And that number assumes everyone else only has 3 cards in hand, which is not likely. Geth, Lord of the Vault, is not only solid at rewarding us when we mill an opponent, but it mills himself. We get value out of a card, and then we also get to further our plan for world domination. I mean, winning a lowly commander match. Yeah, that's what we're here to do. Hedron Crab is, yeah, it's very powerful. I mean, let's assume this little guy comes out on turn 1 and stays until we have 11 lands, so we get 10 activations of him. This may seem unlikely, but who's going to remove an 0-2 that just mills? Well, for 1 mana, over the course of those land drops, we just milled someone for 30 cards for 1 mana. Not quite as good, but very similar in potential, is Manic Scribe, which can mill for almost as many cards as the Crab. So right now, you're probably thinking that an Alpha Strike will kill this deck, and you're probably correct. But there's a lot of politics involved. Mill a dangerous player and make some friends from people that want them dead. But if they Alpha Strike and are low on cards in deck, Riddle Keeper should put them on their deathbed. What will not mill as much, but what will kill as much, is Sewer Nemesis. We can mill someone for 10 or 15 cards theoretically, but the power and toughness is more powerful here. Sire of Stagnation is solely a straight up bomb in this deck. It mills our opponents for 2 whenever they play a land, and we draw 2, so theoretically we mill a total of 6 cards and draw 6 with every rotation of the table. Next up is actually a theme booster card, which is pretty odd to say. Sphinx Mindbreaker will mill a collective 30 cards in one shot when it enters. A kill spell or a board wipe won't interrupt its long-term value. But more than that, this card has a 6/6 flyer on top of that. This can actually block, which is needed in this deck. Sir Conrad the Grim is not only a win condition, but theoretically a mana sink. 2 mana will mill 4 collective cards, which isn't great, but it's better than wasting mana. This brings us to Synergize, Lord of Secrets. Let's try to make this unblockable, and then make this dude huge. If unchecked, he can win the game through crazy mill. If not, then hey, we sit back, block, and wait for an opening. This card will not always be good by any means, but it has potential. Thief of Sanity is more of card draw than anything else, but it mills too. It's basically an anticipate every time it hits a player. Plus, it mills. This thing seems a bit more than standard playable. Plus, if you ally with someone, you can hit them to help find something like a needed board wipe. Moving on to our first enchantment, we have Drowned Secrets. It's the incidental mill that we need. Whenever we play a blue spell, we mill. Our deck is mostly blue spells. The main reason I think this card is so great is because, like many other, it's low on the curve and not a target. Consuming Aberration will be a target. This little enchantment? No. It may very well also mill for 30 cards throughout the course of a game. Fraying Sanity, however, may be a target, as it is one of the best cards in the deck. It kills in one shot with Traumatize or Fleet Swallower and is just incredible. If you mill enough, this card ends the game. Going back to Drowned Secrets for a second, Memory Erosion is like a better copy for just 1 more mana. Each opponent, casting even only 10 spells in a game is very doable, and if that were the case, this card would have together milled 60 cards for 3 mana. These types of long-term value for just a little mana make a mill deck possibly worth it. Speaking of long-term value, we have Patient Rebuilding. this card is going to be better the longer it's on the field, because it can draw a lot of cards very fast, while milling a little. One important thing to know about mill is to not appear as a threat to any player but one, meaning choose a player that everyone wants to kill, choose a person you think you can beat, and use all of your mill against that person and incidentally mill all others with cards like Psychic Corrosion. The other players will hopefully allow you to mill out the threat, and then you can turn your resources against the other players with cards like Sphinx's Tutelage, or even attack with a huge creature for victory. Extract from Darkness is another example of an incidental mill card. Those 3 cards may seem insignificant, and they probably are, but when the game goes longer, they matter more. When they are free value with getting a creature back, they do matter. Plus, with this card, we can get back a huge Eldrazi that might save us the game. And if unfortunately we have gotten into the late game without card draw, if we need something to do with our mana, and we are trying to mill out those last 10 cards, then let's tap out and be able to do it again with increasing confusion. We can mill a lot with this card. Yes, the cards per mana are awful with this card, but we can finish someone off potentially. Life's Finale is really a board wipe. Unfortunately, one of the only this list runs because of the need for aggressive and viable mill, but this board wipe does mill technically. It gets in and finds some good choices for us to reanimate. Mind Funeral is a unique card for the list. Besides the commander, I tried to avoid putting in cards that left mill to chance and had no other effects. The odds are unpredictable, and mill that wins only 1 game ever, and that was because of luck, is not what I want to create. But Mind Funeral is 3 mana, and for that lower price I'll take a gamble. The other gamble card is Mind Grind. I mean, holy cow, this thing makes increasing confusion look like a joke. Startled Awake is a card I highly debated putting in the deck or not. At the end of the day, it's just not good enough for many decks. But this thing can keep coming back again and again. It can be incredibly powerful because it won't stop visiting us in our dreams. Actually, that's creepy, not powerful. But still, Talent of the Telepath is not as much a risky card because we really should always have that spell mastery, and taking someone's spell, ramp, card draw removal, all of it will be ours. Ha ha ha! Sorry, what's as good as Frank's Sanity? Keening Stone. Yes, it's so slow, but if we have other incidental constant mill happening, then once it's online, this card's going to finish a person's game with only 1 or 2 activations. Mind Crank is up next, and well, I don't need to do anything for this card to do work. I just sit back with my Consuming Aberration and watch the mayhem. Primal Amulet, maybe Ramp, maybe Synergy, but in this deck it's all 3. It ramps us out into a land that can copy a crazy mill spell. Dimir Charm is versatile, and if we have extra mana, we can stifle an opponent's next draw while we mill them as well. A good mill deck cannot afford to just mill. It needs everything else a normal deck needs, like a meaningful board state, blockers, card draw, and ramp, and it needs removal. Grizzly Spectacle is really good at killing Sarah Avatar. I did once win a game like that. Took a second, but I won. Induced Paranoia is also good at felling the mighty because we already want to counter stuff, so why not mill? Thought Scour is next up. It only mills for 2. Yes, it does, but it can come early, as in turn 1, and replace itself at instant speed. The final mill card is Jace Memory Adept. For 5 mana, that 0 is incredible. Next is a card that Synergize with mill. Being able to fill the graveyard is important, but it's nothing compared to what we will do with these cards. A card like Avatar of O will go crazy in this deck, destroying so many creatures in just a short period of time. But let's steal stuff too. Diluvian Primordial, Necrotic Ooze, Puppeteer Click, and however you say that, are all busted when players have an insanely big graveyard. It's almost like drawing a card after being able to search through a bunch of cards. It's like a bigger Anticipate plus an Omniscience. The Haunt of Hightower is even crazier in this deck. It gets a card out of each opponent's hand, and whenever we mill, this card gets crazier. We mill someone for 10 and get 10 counters on this flying creature that we can make someone block or they will die. So naturally they might let through a certain commander named Mirko Vosk because they only left up 1 flying blocker and will die otherwise. Similar is a White of Precinct 6, which is going to be one heck of a creature and a blocker. And what else is better than Rexel, the Risen Deep? This card is straight value. Free stuff. Mnemonic Betrayal is a bit risky because it could kill one of our creatures. But it is worth it because we get access to someone's entire library, essentially. And if we are milling, let's put ourselves out of harm's way with a nice little artifact called Profane Memento. This thing will gain us so much life that hopefully attacking us won't even matter. Drown in the lock. Just drown it in the lock. Get rid of it, counter whatever you want to for only 2 mana. We don't need this deck to be firing on all cylinders. If it's even firing on 1 cylinder, then we can kill whatever we want. We can counter whatever we want. For the very last non-land card in the deck, we couldn't reasonably play anything other than Visions of Beyond. This card should read as follows: 1 mana, draw 3 cards. Thank the Lord for this reprint, because this is a must-play in Mill deck. Finally is our utility lands before we leave Mill for the day. Just the day, though. If anything is going downhill, then Bojuka Bog may help us stabilize while shutting off graveyard themes. Duskmantle, House of Shadow, is Mill on a land, which is incredibly powerful if you run out of cards in hand. And by incredibly powerful, I mean pretty good for land. What is actually decently powerful is Nephalia Drownyard. The very last card we will go over today is Mystic Sanctuary, because it can bring back a card like Mindgrind or Traumatize. So that is our deck list. I'm going to be creating this list, trying it out, and reporting back in a little while, so make sure you are subscribed to see that video. Also, stay tuned for possible mill-related decks in other formats. Overall, Commander is about what makes you happy, so here at the Mana Confluence, we love some weird and wacky commanders and fun decks in every format. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.